I'm not gonna lie. For the longest time, and by that I mean up until early a couple years ago, I had very little interest in any form of superhero movies. Sure, I saw Guardians of the Galaxy and liked it, but that's about it. Nothing more, nothing less. Maybe it was the long ingrained memories in my mind of being told they were boys' stuff, and girls can't and shouldn't be interested in them. Or maybe I just didn't want to get out of my comfort zone. Step out of the realm of animated and occasionally live-action fantasy films and into a more broad range of genres. Whatever it was, I didn't care for any such films. In the summer of 2016, Fox released the sixth, not counting the Wolverine movies, installment in the X-Men franchise, X-Men Apocalypse. The film would pick up around the time after X-Men First Class and follow the same characters now facing Apocalypse, an ancient being who is reawakened and plans on bringing the ends of the world so he may rule. It got mixed reviews, still managing to please the fans and critics alike. So, why am I talking about this today? Well, this was next on my list of movies to watch when Netflix took it down literally the day before I got to it. I've been meaning to see it ever since, but sometimes even the internet can't get you certain shows or movies. I really like Days of Future Past and hoped that this one would deliver on the same scale, maybe even more. So when I saw this as part of a movie marathon on TV over the Labor Day weekend, I knew it was finally time to see it. And now, for the first ever Jay's Film Friday, let's have a look at X-Men Apocalypse. For a superhero movie with the word apocalypse in the title, the visuals are surprisingly not bland or dark. Yeah, one would assume that a film like this would be visually bleak, very dark, muted grays and dull colors, but no, it's not. I'm very happy about that. Bland and dull visuals suck, in my opinion, and suck the life out of the scene. Maybe that's why I haven't watched any DC movies besides Wonder Woman. A good example of this is the final fight scene. The scenery is mostly rubble and broken metal, but the color of the characters, especially those like Beast and Quicksilver, pop in contrast, giving them our focus instead of everything else. The colors aren't too flashy, however, so they look like they fit right in with the scene. Overall, the colors are nice, not bleak, and not an eyesore. The CGI in this is standard, nothing special. I mean, I can't really tell just by looking, but most, if not all, the CGI looked nice and didn't feel out of place. In particular, I really like Mystique's shape-shifting effect. When she changes appearance, it looks like little scales all over are flipping to the other side to reveal the new appearance. Kinda reminds me of those weird color change sequin things all the kids have these days. This little detail, while breaking the realism slightly, was just so visually interesting I couldn't take my eyes off it. And yes, she does this in all the previous ones, but I'm reviewing this one right now, so let me be happy here. Since this technically does fall under visuals, I'll talk about the character designs. What can I say? They're great. Like, most of them look like normal people, and I think that's a nice touch considering they aren't really superheroes, they're just people. No bright costumes or spandex here, well, until the third act, but even then their matching outfits look pretty ordinary. Maybe this was a stylistic choice, since they aren't really X-Men yet. The only ones who really look out of place are the villains, of course. They all stand out from each other visually. I especially like Angel in this, who got upgraded to sweet metal wings. How he flies, I have no idea. Apocalypse looks good, though not very interesting. If you asked me to draw him from memory, I'd probably end up with a big guy with a grayish face and a high-collared jacket. He looks intimidating, but he's just uninteresting and very forgettable, visually. The visuals of this movie are nice, but that's about it. They don't go above and beyond like some other superhero movies do, despite its best efforts. It wasn't a pain to look at, it just didn't do anything special. Overall, this one gets a 6 out of 10. Now, normally these types of movies don't do very well in terms of music. When you think of any superhero movies that have memorable music, what comes to mind? Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor Ragnarok, Deadpool 2. Okay, these may just be what I think of, but honestly, they're not bad answers. As I'm writing this, I'm listening to the soundtrack, and it's not that bad. It all sounds very good, symphonically, but I barely remember any of this from the movie. Well, except for Sweet Dreams, the song they play in the scene where Quicksilver saves all the students. That was a nice touch. Thank you, Eurythmics. Otherwise, a serviceable but kind of forgettable soundtrack. Thank goodness music doesn't affect the score in superhero movies as much as other genres, at least in my rating system. So, a 5.75 out of 10. Now, what I personally like about these kinds of movies is that as time goes on, they get less about big flashy lights and explosions and more about interesting characters. This is not an exception. Like all the previous X-Men movies, the characters in this work off of each other really well and stand out amongst each other. There's so many characters in this, it's hard to call one the main character, but since it does focus on Xavier a lot, I guess we'll call him that for now. Charles takes more of a backseat role in this, letting the other X-Men show off their abilities. And that is pretty neat to see. I mean, you got so many X-Men, they all got their abilities. You got Rogue, Nightcrawler, Mystique. Havoc? Is Havoc in this one? I forget if Havoc is in this one, but he might be. He's pretty cool too. You got so many X-Men. Gotta make use of them, and it's super rad. Each character gets their chance to shine, and that's nice. Really nice. Charles deals with the woman from the previous movie who he once loved and now finds that she's married, while also trying to protect the students from Apocalypse and trying to convince Magneto again that he doesn't have to be their enemy. There's a lot of tension between those two. He has a lot on his plate, and the guy who plays him in this, James McAvoy, I believe, does a great job as his character. Magneto is the other most prominent guy in this, going from a happy dad in Poland to a vengeful bad guy allied with Apocalypse in under an hour. How do you do that? How do you go from 0 to 100? Oh yeah, your daughter died. Oops, sorry. He goes through so much, and yet still manages to forgive in the end, which is a really neat message. His actor, Michael Fassbender, does an amazing job here, which is only enhanced by the overall character. Other characters I really liked in this were Quicksilver, who is my favorite, and got a really fun scene in this, and Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, who we got to see the origin story of, which is always nice, and especially with him. I mean, you shoot laser out of your eyes, your origin story has to be pretty messed up. Oh no, I'm in school. Pew, pew, lasers. Oh no. The characters in this, both new and returning, made this an interesting film. They all looked and acted unique from each other, which just made them more memorable. That's the highlight here. Memorability. 2 weeks from now, I bet I could still tell you what characters were on Apocalypse's team and what they do. And that's a good sign for a franchise that is 6 movies in with hundreds of comics before that. This gets a 7 out of 10. Now, y'all are probably saying, Jay, what happens in this movie? I want to know, because you haven't said anything. And it's kind of hard to tell a review about a movie without exactly explaining the plot. And honestly, I like explaining plots, so buckle up. This is a bit of a weird one, especially if you're uninitiated. Now, X-Men Apocalypse follows X-Men First Class, where it takes place in the 80s and Professor X still has hair. The movie starts off showing that in ancient Egypt, Apocalypse, this big, bad gray dude, was worshipped as a god, and would, when his body started to decay, ditch it and hop into a new one, like a hermit crab that grown a little too big. He's trapped under a collapsing pyramid and put into a deep sleep until Moira, who was a love interest for Xavier in the previous movie, accidentally wakes him up. Because gosh dang it, archaeologists can't go 5 seconds without touching something that doesn't really belong to them and awakening some ancient deity. We cut to somewhere in America and see Cyclops' origin. He's in high school and oh no, pew, laser eyes, that's hella dangerous, you could kill somebody. So he goes to Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, where hopefully he has less of a chance of murdering his classmates because he needs to open his eyes to see. We later see Angel, an undefeated champion in underground fighting ring, and damn does he look cool. A young and very scared Nightcrawler is forced to fight him, and honestly, I think I'd be scared too. I mean, you're thrown in a ring where you have to fight a man with bird wings, and your only power is that you can teleport a short way away. I'd be terrified. Now, this fight is pretty damn cool. I certainly didn't expect to see it, but I appreciate it. Angel accidentally burns his wing, and Mystique breaks Nightcrawler out, and they make a daring escape. She helps him get a fake passport so she can bring him to Xavier. Later, we cut to Cairo, that's in Egypt, and we see Aurora, that's Storm for those who don't know, rocking a mohawk and stealing from vendors in a crowded marketplace who clearly do not appreciate being stolen from. When they corner her, a hooded Apocalypse defends her by using sand to both trap and kill her assailants. That's pretty sweet, but also pretty scary. Next, we see Eric, aka Magneto, who in a previous scene used his powers in public to save a coworker, and that's pretty sweet. X-Men save people, but not everyone likes them. And that's understandable, but also pretty sad. Now he rushes his wife to get packed, knowing that a secret is out and the government will come for him. They can't find their daughter, so he searches for her and eventually finds her being held hostage by a small squadron of officers in the forest. Eric begs for her safety in exchange for his compliance, and when he starts to walk away, his daughter starts to call after him. A nice parallel to the beginning of the first movie, where he's separated from his mother. It's revealed that she too is a mutant, one that can control animals. Suddenly, the air is filled with birds that swoop down and attack the officers. Oh god, it's Birdemic again! No, it's not, don't worry. Eric tries to get her to stop, and in the panic, an officer with a bow and arrow, because no metal around Magneto, of course, shoots, impaling both his wife and child. Eric rushes over, clutching them and sobbing, and it's a damn emotional scene, and then proceeds to kill all of the officers, a dozen or so of them, in one go by shooting his daughter's necklace through them one by one. Holy shit, that's brutal as fuck, and I love it. Xavier and Alex, Cyclops' brother, go to see Moira, who tells them about Apocalypse. This part is mostly backstory, so not very important, but for people who are lore hounds like me, it's good. It's cool. Basically, he's suspected to be the world's first mutant, was worshipped as a god in ancient Egypt, which we kind of already know because of the intro. He's going to call upon the Four Horsemen wherever he goes and inhabits a new body every so often. You know, just the usual villain stuff. We cut back to Aurora, who takes Apocalypse home because he did save her, and honestly, two cool mutants should stay together. He touches her TV and absorbs all the information of everything that's happened since he got trapped in ancient times. He sees humanity has lost its way and must be cleansed, which sounds like a mix of Ultron and those people who think that humanity is the one mistake on Earth and should be purged for the world to survive, but like 10 times more radical and awful. He gives Aurora more power, changing her hair to iconic white, which honestly we were all waiting for, and thank God it finally happened because she looks great. On the other side of the world, Mystique brings Nightcrawler to the school, and him and Cyclops, Jubilee, and Jean Grey go to see Return of the Jedi. I wonder what time period this movie takes place in! Wow! So retro! Anyways, who cares? Apocalypse goes to where Nightcrawler got the fake ID in search of strong mutants to join him. Do you get it? Do you get it yet? He's Apocalypse. He's looking for his Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. I can't believe it took me 3 days to realize that. My God, I'm blind. He finds Psylocke, a badass lady with a purple laser sword that honestly I want in my life, and gives her more power, bringing her into their party. She takes him to Angel, who's moping around because he's a baby and he lost a fight. Apocalypse turns his wings to steel, and Angel joins the party. This will be the core group for now. And honestly, they look frickin' badass. I don't want to mess with these guys. Eric goes back to work to confront his coworkers about them ratting him out to the police. And by confront, I mean he does that for a little bit, then tries to murder them all. Because when you're a mutant, and your entire life hangs in the balance because you're hiding that, because if people find out, then you could be sent to jail, put in a cage, and experimented on and dissected. You really don't want people to know you're a mutant. But you know what? Let's just tell everyone. Because, hey, he saved a guy. What an asshole. Anyways, Apocalypse and his company come in, and they recruit him to their cause. They take him to a concentration camp, which honestly must be pretty hard for him. He was a child in the Holocaust, and they use that as a way to get him to harness his anger into power. Apocalypse gives him the ability to take the metal molecules from the dirt and be able to lift up the ground, which is an incredible sight to see. He destroys everything. It's awesome. I love it, but like, wow. Back at the school, Xavier uses Cerebro to try and talk Magneto out of going bad again. I feel like this happens almost every movie, but considering how easy it is for Magneto to say, fuck humanity, mutants should rule, it's kind of warranted. Apocalypse takes hold of their mental connection and uses it to contact people all across the world. He makes all the countries release their nukes into space, and Cerebro's overloaded. Xavier can't get out in time, so his friends destroy it. Apocalypse and his team come by and snatch up Xavier, leaving just in time before Alex, aka Havoc, unleashes a powerful chest blast of energy. He just misses them, going right through the wall into a jet engine that causes a massive explosion. Now, ladies and gents, this here is my favorite scene in the entire goddamn movie. Quicksilver just happens to show up at that time and sees the very beginnings of the blast. To the tune of Eurythmic's Sweet Dreams, he zips around, grabbing everyone and rushing them outside before the building explodes. He accidentally forgets Alex inside or whatever, but it doesn't really make a difference. Whose favorite X-Men is Havoc? And he didn't do much in this movie. He wasn't really around. Rip Havoc. I don't know. A helicopter comes down and all the students are knocked out for some reason, except for Jean, Nightcrawler, and Cyclops, who hid during this whole bit. They teleport onto the helicopter as it carries Moira, Beast, Quicksilver, and Mystique away. Why those 4 specific characters? I don't know, but I have a feeling the movie's going to explain it, so I'm just going to shut up and keep going. The 4 are put in a cell where it's revealed that their captor is, oh my goodness, the guy who mutated Wolverine. Wow. Haven't seen that guy since high school. He presses them to give the location of Xavier, but the 4 admit that they don't really know where he is. Meanwhile, the other 3 sneak around the base until they find a cage that sounds like it's holding some kind of animal. They open it and release the Fury of Wolverine, who slices up all the soldiers who stand in his way on a mad, bloody rampage. Badass. Jean Grey stops him, removing the brainwashing equipment thingy attached to his body, and without a word, Wolverine runs out the door into the snow. Okay then. They rescue the other mutants. The team suits up and takes a cool-looking jet to Cairo to face Apocalypse and his horsemen in a final showdown. Apocalypse reveals to Xavier that he was going to use him as his new body so he can have his powers of far-reaching telepathy. Of course, this doesn't really go down well with Xavier, but he's forced into it anyway. The mutants split up, with Quicksilver and Mystique trying to reconcile Magneto, but failing to do so. The rest of the mutants fight, which looks super cool, and Nightcrawler teleports Xavier, who is now bald because of magic, and the rest of his friends, except Quicksilver and Mystique, back onto the jet. The jet is immediately attacked from above by Angel and Psylocke. Nightcrawler, in a move that I haven't seen done by anyone besides Lockjaw, teleports all of his friends at once onto the ground, trapping Angel inside as the jet crashes. Okay, so all the heroes and the villains are on the ground again, except for Angel, who's dead, but who cares? Quicksilver pulls a Spider-Man and zips around, getting a few hits in before getting stopped by a very angry Apocalypse, who breaks his leg. He orders Psylocke to finish the mutant off, but she slits his throat, revealing it's in fact Mystique in disguise. Apocalypse heals instantly, then proceeds to choke her as Storm watches, seeing her hero close to death. Xavier uses his mental connection he got previously with Apocalypse, going into a mind zone and fighting him. It's kinda like Sherlock's Mind Palace, except an arena. Too bad telepathy can't help you in a fist fight. Apocalypse beats the crap out of the telepath, leaving him bloody on the ground, crying out for help. Magneto, at the last minute, turns on Apocalypse, rapid-firing metal bits at him, while Cyclops fires his laser eye at him with full force. Jean Grey defies gravity and, standing in the air, unleashes Phoenix in a bright blast of orange flame, literally disintegrating Apocalypse. I'm sure that power won't come back to haunt her. Dark Phoenix? The movie ends with Eric and Jean repairing the school, Quicksilver revealing to Aurora that he is Eric's son, and their decision to stick around at the school. So, that's the way post-credit scene. After the credits, a scene plays out that is just plain confusing. I'm not really into the comics, so I have a vague idea of what's actually going on here, but I'm gonna try to address it. Scientists come in, take out a vial of blood labeled Weapon X, Wolverine's alternate title, and puts it in a briefcase labeled Essex Company. I've been told this is hinting at future movies, but I don't really know what it refers to. The story of the movie is pretty standard for an X-Men film, but that's not a bad thing. It has a lot of action and manages to have a lot of character moments and dialogue-based scenes, something that's becoming increasingly more common as superhero movies become more complex. Every character gets their time to shine, which I thought was interesting to see, especially with all the interesting characters. Overall, the plot works well and doesn't drag anywhere. I don't think I checked the time once throughout the whole thing. 7.25 out of 10. X-Men Apocalypse is a fun movie. I like this one, though not quite as much as other superhero movies I've seen before. I liked it not as much exactly as Days of Future Past, though it is more lighthearted, and time travel isn't involved in this one, meaning I don't have to make a graphic timeline in order to understand it. Like I've been saying throughout the review, this movie gives all the mutants time in the spotlight, and I found it cool seeing all of them do their thing to further the plot or beat up a bad guy. I honestly thought this was going to be the X-Men equivalent of Infinity War. I know that sounds so stupid, but I thought, oh, big, overpowered bad guy wants to kill everyone, and everyone teams up to defeat him. Sounds familiar. It was only when I actually watched this did I see how wrong I was. This is a whole different animal. So, my final score, X-Men Apocalypse, gets a 7 out of 10.